There was a time when the streets were safe, when the sun rose over Southtown and cast golden light upon the rooftops. That time is gone. After the collapse, the world fell into fragments. Governments crumbled, cities turned into wastelands. Outlaws ruled the streets. Law had become a rumor, and peace was something you had to fight for. But amid the chaos, two brothers rose from the rubble. Trained in the ancient martial art of Susetsu Ken, Billy and Jimmy Lee forged their fists into justice. They weren't saviors, they were survivors. But when you've lost everything, sometimes that's all you need. Now, the Black Warriors, Southtown's most brutal gang, have taken the one person Billy swore to protect, Marian. She is more than a lover. She is hope, and hope is worth fighting for.
The city once known as Southtown no longer had a name. The world had moved on. What remained were ruins, twisted steel, boarded windows, and alleys where the sun rarely reached. Billy Lee stood still, his silhouette framed against a sky the color of bruised charcoal. Smoke curled from distant fires. Glass crunched beneath his boots as he stepped into the place where it happened. Here, the sidewalk still bore bloodstains. The brick wall to his right had been cracked by the force of her impact. He could see it clearly. Marian, dragged into the alley, her scream muffled by the coarse hand of a gang soldier. The blow to her stomach, a fist without mercy. She crumpled like a paper doll. They had taken her, not for ransom, not for war, just to show they could. His hand curled into a fist. From inside the tattered pocket of his vest, he drew out a strip of fabric, her red scarf, the last thing she touched before the Black Warriors vanished into the city's belly. The wind howled through the alley like a whispering ghost. Billy closed his eyes. "You always said I needed to let go of anger. I'm sorry, not this time." He turned and found his brother already waiting. Jimmy Lee, taller, darker-haired, a shadow beside the flame. He leaned against a rusted dumpster, arms crossed, a crowbar dangling loosely from one hand. "You weren't gonna wait for me, huh?" Jimmy asked, his voice carrying the dry humor only brothers could afford in moments like this. "I thought you were done with this life." Jimmy shrugged. "I was, but I'm not done with you." For a moment, neither said anything. Then they walked, side by side, into the heart of the broken city. The streets were alive, not with people, but with echoes of past fights, of sirens that no longer answered calls, of rage that hung in the air like dust. Billy and Jimmy knew this world. They were born in it, raised in it, forged by it. They passed walls painted in gang symbols, chaotic sigils scrawled in red and black. The emblem of the Black Warriors was everywhere, a dragon coiled around a broken sword, territorial, violent, absolute. As they turned a corner into an open avenue, the trap was already set. Figures emerged from doorways, fire escapes, behind gutted cars, tattooed faces sneering, scarred knuckles clenching. No one said a word. Then one moved, and all hell broke loose. Billy ducked under the first swing, his elbow driving into a man's ribs with a sickening crack. Jimmy swept low, knocking two off their feet. Boots stumped pavement, blood sprayed across graffiti-covered walls. They fought like one. Every strike was a message, every move a memory. Billy remembered when his master taught them to breathe, not to punch harder, but to calm the storm within. Now he let the storm out. A chain lashed toward his face. He caught it mid-air, yanked the wielder forward, and dropped him with a knee to the gut. Jimmy flipped a thug over a railing, his scream echoing until it vanished into the chasm below. The battle raged. A fire hydrant burst, water spraying into the air like a geyser. Flames crackled from a burning trash drum, casting the scene in flickering gold and crimson. He spun, bloodied, breathing hard. Then he saw her, no, not Marian, but her jacket, torn, thrown on the hood of a rusted sedan like a trophy. A message. Come find her, if you dare. He didn't hesitate. He tore the jacket free, clutched it tight. Jimmy was beside him a moment later. They're leading us somewhere. Billy didn't answer. He already knew. As the last thug hit the ground, the brothers stood alone beneath a flickering street lamp. Their shadows stretched long on the cracked pavement. Above them, a distant neon sign blinked on and off. Welcome to South District, home of the warriors. Billy looked to the skyline, toward the dark silhouette of a crane far in the distance where Marian might be held. Let's keep going, he said, voice low. Jimmy nodded. You thinking what I'm thinking? Billy turned to him, blue eyes cold as steel. We're not stopping until she's home. And the dragon moved forward.
The trail led them deeper into the skeleton of the city. Smoke hung low over the streets, curling in greasy ribbons between the rusted beams of forgotten buildings. They were entering what was once a construction zone before the collapse. Now it was something else. The locals called it the Iron Yard. Billy and Jimmy stood at the mouth of the zone, flanked by bent fencing and graffiti-scrawled barricades. Machinery lay half dismantled, torn open like corpses of a civilization that died mid-sentence. Towering cranes reached into the mist like skeletal arms. Concrete mixers sat frozen, their drums coated in blood. Jimmy scanned the area, jaw set, ambush written all over it. Billy didn't answer. He stepped forward, eyes locked ahead. Somewhere in this twisted mess of iron and shadow, Marian had been moved. The message left on her jacket wasn't just provocation, it was a map. The Black Warriors wanted them here. Fine. Let them get what they asked for. They passed beneath the first girder bridge when the first wave struck. A man in a yellow vest leapt down with a length of pipe, aiming for Billy's skull. The clang of metal echoed, but Billy had already spun, elbowing the thug mid-air. He crashed into a wheelbarrow, toppling in a screech of rust. More poured out. Burly men in construction gear repurposed as armor. Helmets, chainsaws, broken drills. The yard had become their playground, and the Lee brothers were the newest toys. Jimmy caught a tire iron mid-swing and turned it into a weapon of his own, cracking it across two jaws in a blink. Billy slammed his knee into a goon's gut, flipped him over, and followed with a bone-snapping stomp. Steel beams echoed with violence. Each impact rang like a war drum. Enemies attacked from above. Scaffolding lined with masked lookouts, barrels rolled from ledges. A jackhammer started suddenly, spraying sparks and sending one man flying in terror. It was chaos, but the Lee brothers moved like water through fire. They'd trained for this. They reached a wide-open clearing in the center of the site, a half-poured foundation surrounded by towering girders. Pools of rainwater shimmered under dim construction lights, casting reflections that danced like phantoms. There, in the middle of it all, stood something far more dangerous than the thugs before. A Bobo. He was enormous. Shirtless, skin taut like leather over slabs of meat and scar. His head was nearly square, with a jaw like a cinder block and arms the size of tree trunks. Chains wrapped around his fists, Spikes jutted from his boots. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. With a grunt like a landslide, a Bobo charged. The ground shook. Billy rolled aside, barely avoiding the freight train of muscle. A Bobo plowed into a cement pillar, shattering it into chunks. Dust exploded outward in a deafening cloud. Jimmy was already mid-air, springing off a scaffold to deliver a two-footed kick into a Bobo's back. The brute staggered. Not enough. A Bobo reached behind him, grabbed Jimmy by the leg mid-fall, and swung him like a rag doll into a heap of metal piping. Billy yelled, rushing forward with a series of rapid jabs, body, ribs, neck. A Bobo took it all, then grinned, grabbing Billy's fists mid-punch and headbutting him with bone-breaking force. Blood smeared the concrete. The fight turned primal. Jimmy rose, coughing, eyes blazing. He grabbed a hanging chain and swung down like a pendulum, colliding with a Bobo's side. Billy, dazed, took the cue and drove his elbow into the brute's kidney again and again. Finally, a Bobo buckled to one knee. Billy and Jimmy didn't stop. Together, they struck, one left, one right, until a Bobo crumpled with a thunderous crash. Silence. The yard was still. Billy leaned against a column, blood dripping from his lip. That was new. Jimmy spat on the ground, shoulder bruised. You think they've got another one of him somewhere? Billy didn't laugh. Instead, he looked around. On a nearby crate, something shimmered. A bracelet. Marian's. Her initials engraved inside the worn silver. Fresh blood on the clasp. She had been here. Recently. Jimmy picked it up, his knuckles tightening. They're moving her fast. Billy nodded. They're trying to wear us down. Jimmy looked toward the far side of the yard, where the path continued downward into a subway tunnel long since decommissioned. Then we don't stop, Jimmy said. Billy took one last look at a Bobo's still body. No. Now we hit back. And with that, the brothers vanished into the shadows, into the tunnels below. Because this wasn't just a rescue anymore. It was war.
The tunnel yawned open like the mouth of something ancient. A broken subway entrance, half collapsed, lay hidden behind twisted scaffolding and a stack of crates no civilian would dare approach. The graffiti was older here, faded, layered, eaten away by time. A shattered sign still clung to the rusted wall. City Line, East Sector Express. Billy stepped first. The air changed instantly. From the smoky grid of the construction yard, they descended into stillness. Cool, damp, claustrophobic. The smell of mildew and rot wrapped around them like a blanket. Faint electric buzzing echoed from somewhere far ahead, broken lights struggling to stay alive. Remind me, Jimmy muttered behind him. Why are we chasing her into a tomb? Billy's voice was low, because they don't think we'll follow. And that's what made it perfect. They walked in silence. The concrete walls were cracked, bleeding rust where metal veins had split. Exposed wires dangled like dead vines. Below them, puddles of stagnant water reflected the trembling lights above. In the distance, a train car lay half derailed, nose deep in rubble, its windows shattered, its roof torn open like something had climbed out from the inside. As they passed it, Jimmy paused. Wait. He crouched and brushed his fingers across the ground, just at the edge of a dried smear.
blood. Not old, not yet blackened. Billy didn't hesitate. He pulled a folded piece of cloth from the cracked tile, thin, laced with floral print, Marian's handkerchief. Still warm. He closed his eyes for a moment. A heartbeat, a breath. They were close. Then the sound changed. Not mechanical, not human. A flutter, a whisper. They turned. Shapes moved at the edge of vision, low, fast, coordinated. And then came the first strike. A blur shot from the darkness, a curved blade whistling through the air. Billy ducked just in time, the steel grazing his cheek before embedding into a wall. Jimmy spun, but the attackers had already vanished into the shadows. Ninjas. Not the loud, dramatic kind from movies. These were silent, practiced. Killers trained to move with the air and disappear before sound could catch them. Black warriors. No, these were something more. The Nightblades. Rumors on the street whispered of them. A division within the Black Warriors, trained in ancient combat, hired from fallen dojos and corrupted temples. They didn't take prisoners. Billy and Jimmy stood back to back. The ambush began. From above, from below, from both sides. Blades gleamed like silver teeth in the dark. Smoke bombs erupted, blinding. The Lead brothers fought by sound and instinct. Fists met flesh, bone cracked under elbows, steel clashed with knuckles. A dagger caught Jimmy's jacket. He spun, disarming the assassin and using the same blade to pin him to a pillar. Billy smashed two together, sweeping low and knocking them into the third. But they kept coming. Fast, fluid, relentless. Then Billy saw it, scrawled in red chalk across the wall near a sealed door. The dragon's heart is broken. He froze. Jimmy noticed. What? Billy pointed. That phrase. That's from our old dojo. Jimmy's voice dropped. No one outside the school knew it. Someone inside had betrayed them. The final wave came in silence. 4 blades, perfect formation, no wasted movement. This was the elite. Not thugs, not street trash, but warriors, mirrors of the brothers themselves. It was beautiful and deadly. Jimmy faced 2 at once, dodging under twin strikes and flipping one over a rail. Billy took his into the broken train car, metal groaning under their weight as fists and feet tore through old seats. The last attacker drove Billy into a corner, mask cracked, eyes familiar. Billy caught his wrist, twisted, and held the blade to the assassin's throat. Who sent you? The ninja didn't answer, just stared, then whispered a single word before biting down on something in his mouth. Shadowheart. A burst of smoke. By the time it cleared, the ninja was gone, dead. Silence returned. Only the slow drip of water remained. Billy stood there, blood on his arm, mind racing. Jimmy joined him, breathing hard, wiping a cut across his brow. Shadowheart? Jimmy asked. Billy nodded, eyes narrowed. Not a gang, a syndicate, deep underground. We heard rumors, no proof, until now. They've got Marian? Billy clenched his fist. They're moving her deeper. He turned to the sealed doorway. A keypad, long rusted, hung beside it, but the hinges were cracked. A path lay behind, and Marian's pendant, deliberately placed, hung like bait. They were being drawn in, but the Lee brothers didn't retreat. Not now, not ever. They stepped through, into the belly of the dark.
The door slammed shut behind them. A loud clang, a hiss of escaping air, then silence. The brothers stood still, breathing in stale metal and dust. The tunnel behind them was gone, sealed like a tomb. Ahead lay only one path, forward. They had entered the Black Fortress.
Not a castle, not a stronghold of ancient stone. This was modern ruin, an underground compound of forgotten war tech, power generators, and cold corridors bathed in flickering red emergency lights. The air vibrated with energy, low and constant, like a sleeping beast breathing beneath the earth. The layout was wrong, twisting hallways, turning on themselves like a maze designed not to imprison, but to disorient. Every inch screamed paranoia, control. Billy ran his hand along the wall. This wasn't built by the Black Warriors. Jimmy looked around, jaw clenched. Shadowheart. And then the lights changed. Motion sensors triggered a howl, sharp, mechanical. Doors slid open, and suddenly the hallway became a gauntlet. Automated turrets burst from the walls, spewing steel. The brothers ducked and rolled, diving behind a collapsed locker. Sparks rained as bullets ricocheted off concrete. "Move!" Billy shouted, sprinting forward, weaving through the hail of fire. Jimmy followed, vaulting over debris. They zigzagged, their movements choreographed by years of training. One wrong step, and death. They found cover in a loading bay, rows of shipping crates marked with untraceable codes. Blood stained the floor. Bodies lay still. Not enemies. Shadowheart soldiers. Someone had killed them. From above, a voice echoed, filtered, distorted, mechanical. "You've come far, dragons. Let's see how far you bleed." A wall opened, revealing a descending freight elevator. No other exit. They stepped on without hesitation. The doors closed. The elevator groaned downward. It was too slow, too quiet. Billy flexed his hands. His knuckles were bruised, split. Jimmy had a gash above his brow, dried blood running like a tear down his cheek. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Then came the rumble. The elevator jolted, the lights flickered, and from the shaft walls, clawed arms reached in. Machine soldiers, drones stitched together from old warbots in gang armor. Clawed metal, glowing eyes, synthetic rage. Billy grabbed the railing, launching a roundhouse kick into one. Sparks exploded. Jimmy used his chain to wrap around another, pulling it head first into the wall. The entire elevator became a battlefield. Fists against wires, flesh against steel. When the elevator slammed to a stop, only the brothers stood, barely breathing, burned, bleeding, but alive. The final chamber was vast, a massive circular arena, lined with screens, wires, and torches burning cold blue fire. In the center, chained to a steel platform, was Marian. She was barely conscious, lips dry, hair tangled, but her eyes widened when she saw them. "Billy." He stepped forward. Then a figure dropped from above, the Shadowheart commander, clad in black tactical armor, half samurai, half war machine. In each hand, a blade shaped like a dragon fang. Jimmy spoke first. "You again." Billy's voice was colder. "You set the trap." The commander circled them. "I did more than that. I've watched you, studied you. You're not saviors, you're weapons." "Then you should know," Billy said, stepping between him and Marian. "We never break." The fight erupted. It was a blur of violence and steel. The commander struck like lightning, fluid, surgical. Billy blocked with his forearms, absorbing the blow before countering with a brutal elbow. Jimmy flanked from the side, using speed to chip away at the commander's defense. But the enemy adapted. He parried both, disarmed Jimmy, cut through Billy's vest and into his side. The brothers bled. The commander didn't slow. You fight with passion, but emotion is weakness. Billy gritted his teeth, staggering.
You'd know a lot about weakness. You hide behind a mask." The commander lunged. Billy caught him. Jimmy struck. Together, they overwhelmed him, not with brute force, but with unity. Twin fists, twin hearts, one strike. The commander collapsed, mask shattered. A man beneath, scarred, worn, human. Billy looked at him. "You never stood a chance." They rushed to Marian. Her pulse was weak, but steady. Chains shattered under Jimmy's crowbar. Billy caught her as she fell. She whispered his name, just once, and then she passed out. Billy carried her in his arms, turning to the far corridor, now lit green, an exit. As they stepped through it, a screen lit up behind them. A new figure appeared, holographic, unseen, calm. "The dragons have awakened. Let them enjoy their moment. The real test begins now."
The sun was rising when they emerged from the depths. Not that it made the city any brighter. Ash still floated in the air, riding a lazy breeze across a skyline jagged with collapsed towers and broken neon. Fires burned in metal drums. Distant sirens wailed like fading memories. But to Billy, it felt like the first sunrise in a long time. Marian lay in his arms, her head resting against his chest. Her breathing was slow but steady. Jimmy walked beside them, bruised and bloodied, carrying the weight of 1,000 fists across his back, but still standing. They had made it. They were alive. They moved in silence through the war-torn blocks of Southtown, no longer hunted, no longer hiding. Word must have spread. The Black Warriors had scattered, their fortress broken, their commander defeated. The city knew. Even in a world of chaos, the dragon still had teeth. They stopped at an old fire escape, once leading up to their childhood dojo. A ruin now, but still sacred ground. Billy laid Marian down gently on the dusty mat that remained. She stirred, eyes fluttering open. "Billy," her voice was a breath. "You found me." He nodded. "Always." She tried to sit up, but he stopped her. "Rest, we're safe now." Jimmy sat nearby, bruised and bloodied, carrying the weight of 1,000 fists across his back, but still standing. They had made it. They were alive. He sat nearby with his arms resting over his knees, looking out the shattered window toward the awakening city. His voice came low. "We shouldn't have won." Billy looked at him. "We were outnumbered, outgunned. They knew every move we'd make, but we still walked out." Billy understood what he meant. This wasn't just a gang fight anymore, not just a street war. Someone else was playing a bigger game. He glanced at Marian, then at the shadows on the wall that hadn't moved since sunrise. Shadowheart. They knew our training, our history. That wasn't random. Jimmy's eyes narrowed. "You think they were watching us this whole time?" "I think," Billy said, "we were bait." The silence deepened. Then Jimmy smiled, just a little. "You ever think we'd end up here?" Billy chuckled through the pain. Chained destinies, broken cities, mysterious warlords. Yeah, just how Mom planned it. Jimmy laughed, shaking his head, but then his smile faded. His voice dropped. "You think it's over?" Billy looked at his brother, really looked at him. The lines on his face, the blood caked on his hands, the way his shoulders had started to carry something heavier than muscle. And for once, he didn't have an answer. Instead, he stood, stepping beside him, eyes fixed on the horizon. "No," he said softly, "but she's safe, That's enough for now. Marian stirred again, this time more alert. She sat up slowly, brushing hair from her face. Did we win? Billy kneeled beside her, placing his hand gently over hers. We survived. She smiled, tired but real. Then that's a start. Outside, the first rays of sunlight cracked through the smog, painting the streets in golden fire. For the first time in weeks, the city held its breath. The brothers stood together, side by side, just as they had since childhood. The world had changed, but they had not. From the rooftop above, a raven took flight, its black wings slicing through the morning light. Far below, in the ruins of the Black Fortress, something stirred. Steel shifting, data recovering, orders reactivated. A name appeared on a monitor, blinking like a heartbeat. Project Omega Dragon, initiate? And the screen answered, awaiting re-engagement. The story isn't over. The dragon only sleeps.
Peace returned, but not for long. Somewhere deep beneath the city, gears turned, orders were given. A new enemy rose, not of flesh, but steel. The streets whispered of something darker. The brothers would fight again. For love, for honor, for each other. Because the dragon never sleeps.